morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, April 27th, 2018, a.k.a. the morning after the first round of the NFL Draft. We'll have rounds 2 and 3 tonight. Rounds 4 through 7 will follow tomorrow. I am Dave Biddle. I am very happy to be joined by Patrick Murphy. Patrick, let's start with the Cleveland Browns. They had another kind of surprise a few picks earlier, but the big surprise, pleasant surprise for Buckeye Nation, Denzel Ward going number 4 overall to the Browns. There was a lot of people that thought Ward might go 7th overall to the Bucks. Some people thought maybe it would be number 9 overall to the 49ers. In fact, Mel Kiper's final mock draft, Patrick had Ward going 9th overall to the Niners, but he went 4th overall to the Browns. You know, I'm stoked for the kid. He's a great kid, and 4th overall pick. That is, and the first defensive player taken in the draft, even over Bradley Chubb. That's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised, but pleasantly so, as you mentioned, for Denzel. A kid that is headed home, from just outside of Akron and close to Cleveland. So he'll be, close to friends and family, which is obviously a big deal for someone like that getting to play for the Browns. He was the best cornerback in the draft. I think we all agree on that. Arguably the best defensive back in the draft. And, the Browns obviously liked what they saw from him. I think a lot of people expected Chubb to go kind of as the way the draft fell. But, they've got a pretty solid defensive line in Cleveland. Now it's about shoring some things up. So we got Denzel, headed to the Browns, and I think it'll be fun to watch. As I said, a local kid getting to play for his hometown team. Plus, as Buckeye fans out there know, he's pretty good. I think the only knock that you can have about him is maybe his height. He's a little short, but I think he proved in his couple of years in college that he can defend some NFL-sized wide receivers. Clearly, the Browns didn't have a problem with that because they're taking him 4th overall. But, I guess my initial reaction was a little surprised, but as I looked at it, I think it makes a little sense. And all in all, I'm happy for them. I'm happy for Browns fans, and I think it's going to work out pretty well.
It was a really good night for the Buckeyes because everybody said, okay, the Buckeyes are definitely going to have one guy drafted in the first round, but that might be it. And he'll be a top 10 pick, or maybe closer to 10 than 5. And then Denzel Ward ends up going 4th overall. And then Billy Price, early in the process, especially before he tore his pec, everybody was picking Billy Price as a late first-round pick. Then he tore his pec, and people were moving guys like James Daniels ahead of him, Frank Ragnow, who did go ahead of him. So it looked like if you read the mock drafts over the last week and believed them, the majority of them had Price, not all of them, but the majority of them had Price slipping to the second round. So, when the Bengals took him at number 21, I was pleasantly surprised with that too. It was just a great night, great overall night for the Buckeyes.
Indeed. Billy is a guy, like you said, that I think was, before the injury, a surefire first-round pick, late first round. And it was good to see, somebody look past that injury. We reported, along with a number of other people the other day, that I think it was Adam Schefter who first had it, that his doctor sent a letter out to all the NFL teams saying that he'll be ready by July, be ready for training camp, and, be without restrictions. So, it sounds like Billy will be good to go, and the Bengals seem to have no problem with that. They need offensive linemen, obviously. Billy, the Remington winner last year, after stepping in for Pat Elflein. It'll be interesting to see if they use him at center or guard, but I think he can be good either place. He can play both, obviously, based on his time at Ohio State. So, I was expecting one Buckeye to go in the first round. That was Denzel Ward. It was nice to see 2 go in the round. I know we'd heard some speculation maybe Sam Hubbard might go late in the first round. I imagine he'll go early in the second. But, to get 2 Buckeyes in the first round in what was kind of, I don't want to say a down year, but definitely wasn't, the year we expected a ton of Buckeyes early on, looking back to some other drafts in recent years. That's a positive for Ohio State and the program as it just continues to produce these NFL players.
All right, I promise we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield going number 1 overall to the Browns later in the show, but I do want to push this forward and keep talking about the Buckeyes and where they might go tonight and tomorrow in the draft. Let's start with Sam Hubbard. I think it's safe to say he's going to be a second-round pick tonight. Patrick, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. as I said earlier, I think that we'd heard a little bit about maybe him going late in the first round. Some of those teams towards the end of the first round were apparently interested in him. I'm not shocked that he didn't quite make it into the first round, but I will be shocked if he doesn't go early in the second round, first half of the second round. He's a guy I think that teams look at and see obviously the production that he had at Ohio State, but also the versatility. He can play, at Ohio State he played a few positions before landing at defensive end. I think they see him as potentially a guy who can do some stand-up things at linebacker. He covered a little bit during his time at Ohio State. So I think there's a lot of versatility there, and I think NFL teams, especially as you get into this second day here, are going to look for things like that. Some teams start looking for best option available instead of need, and I think Sam Hubbard certainly will be one of those guys here early on tonight.
Who do you think will be next off the board? Do you think it'll be Jamarco Jones or Jerome Baker, or maybe even Tyquan Lewis or Jalen Holmes?
It's a good question because I think it'll depend on kind of who's drafting and where. We obviously saw a number of trades last night. I expect more of that tonight. Probably, I think, kind of based on what I just said with Sam Hubbard, I think Jerome Baker is probably one of the best available just because of his athleticism. Obviously, his production this last year wasn't as good as it was 2 years ago. So, I imagine either him or Jamarco Jones just because, teams need tackles. I think Tyquan Lewis, while I do believe he'll have a solid NFL career, I think he probably goes a little bit later. I think there's some other defensive ends that, are probably regarded a little bit higher than him. But I think once Tyquan lands on a team, he'll be just fine. But I think it'll either come down to Jamarco or Jerome Baker, just depending on what team sits there and kind of what they need, for their team.
Yeah, I have them both going in the third round. I have Baker and Jones going in the third round. I'm torn on who's going to go ahead of who, because Baker's got all the athletic ability, but for an undersized linebacker, he just isn't physical enough. But he is a playmaker, so someone's going to, I think, and maybe someone will take him in the second round because of his speed. And Jones could go in the second round too. We'll see. I just think it's going to be fun. I think all three of those guys, Hubbard, Baker, and Jones, will go tonight. And then we'll see. I have Tyquan Lewis and Jalen Holmes both going tomorrow. Tyquan, I give him a better chance than Jalen. Even though Jalen has the better body, I think Tyquan Lewis with his production at Ohio State, and then he tested better than people thought. I mean, we have to remember, he ran 0.2 of a second faster than Sam Hubbard at Ohio State's Pro Day. Neither one of them ran at the Combine. Tyquan ran a 4.59 at Pro Day, that was pretty good for him. And Hubbard is a little disappointing, 4.79, but I don't think it's going to hurt Hubbard too much with his size. But I think Lewis might go in the third round, but I'm predicting fourth round for Lewis. I'm also predicting fourth round for Holmes. Your thoughts on Lewis and Holmes?
I agree. I think it'll be very interesting to see when Jalen Holmes lands on a team, what kind of his role is. Obviously at Ohio State for most of his career, he was in the rotation once he became kind of that third or fourth starter. But, not often did we see him start games, a little bit during his senior year, but he showed he can play in a defensive end. He shows he can play in the middle a little bit. I don't think he plays in the middle of the defensive line at the NFL level. I don't think he has that size, but, if we see more teams kind of use that Rushman package that Ohio State has on third downs and whatnot, you can see him fitting in there. I think he can be more than kind of a bit piece once he settles in, but I do think it'll take some time. Tyquan Lewis, I mean, obviously a former Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. He's got the tools. Like you said, he tested better than I think a lot of people thought. So, I think he'll surprise some teams when he gets on the roster. It's just a matter of who wants to take the chance and pull the trigger on him.
Damon Webb, I think he'll go tomorrow. No one thinks he's going to go tonight, I don't think. But I do think he'll get taken tomorrow. I think it might be late, though. I'm thinking maybe sixth round for Damon Webb. What's your prediction for Damon Webb?
Yeah, I think it'll be late as well. I think he's probably the last of the Buckeyes that you can safely say will get drafted. But maybe not even safely. I did see some mock drafts that didn't have him included. But, yeah, 6th or 7th round sounds right for me. I think the way he ended his senior year, really helped him. He just kept getting better and better, I think, from when he became a starter as a junior to the way he ended with the pick against Wisconsin, the pick against USC. And even if you don't look at the stats, I think just his overall production, just the way he played the game, he developed into that safety position once he made the transition from corner. And I think by the end of his time at Ohio State, he looked like a true safety. So, there are a number of guys who have played the position longer and whatnot in the draft, which is why I think he's going to fall. I think then it will be interesting to see, depending on where he lands, how he does, in camps and whatnot, trying to make that roster, because as we know, the later round picks sometimes have difficulty landing there. But I do think he's a guy who can stick around an NFL team and hopefully work his way into a spot down the road.
Yeah, he could go undrafted. I think he will get drafted. I think we're in agreement on that, because speaking of 40 times, Tyquan Lewis outran Damon Webb. Webb ran a 4.62. Again, Tyquan Lewis 4.59. So it's not good when a defensive end is outrunning, especially a defensive end. A lot of people thought it might be productive but not all that athletic in Tyquan Lewis. I don't know how he got that label. He was a big-time prospect coming out of high school, and who thought he was not very athletic. But, he still ran faster than I thought he would, and we'll see. That 40 time is going to hurt Damon Webb. We'll see how much. But, again, I do think he will get drafted tomorrow, but very late in the proceedings. Last one I want to ask you before we talk about Baker Mayfield. We'll stay with quarterbacks. That'll be our theme to end the show here. J.T. Barrett, does he get drafted?
It's so tough to say. A lot of the mock drafts, I saw hardly any that actually had him getting drafted. But, and I think you and I have talked about this before, there's a good chance, not a good chance, there's a chance that a team late will like the leadership and just, how he interviewed and whatnot, what he was able to do as a winner at Ohio State, and, take a flyer on him in that 7th round. I think that's kind of what the 7th round is about. If you're asking me to make what I think will happen, I think he probably goes undrafted, and then ends up signing with the team pretty quickly there afterwards, just because of what I mentioned, his kind of intangible type of things. I don't know how long he sticks around the NFL. I think he's a good clipboard guy, but, I don't know how many teams are going to hang on to a guy that they're not confident can step in if their quarterback gets hurt. There's a lot of NFL career backups and whatnot out there that are available. But, I think he will end up on a team by the end of the weekend. If I have to pick, I'm saying he goes undrafted, but it wouldn't surprise me if he slides into the 7th round.
I'm torn, too. Just because he's going to be a highly coveted undrafted free agent. He's going to be one of those guys where as the draft's winding down, everybody that needs like extra quarterback in camp is going to be calling him, because he'd be the perfect type of, even if you think he's never going to take a snap, like a practice squad type quarterback. So I think for that reason, because you're going to have to be they're at the mercy of what JT wants to do. I think if you're a team and you need just an extra body at the quarterback position, you kind of like a throwaway pick, so to speak, a 7th round compensatory pick. I'm going very specific on you, Bucknutters. Predicting J.T. Barrett will be a 7th round compensatory pick. So, but again, like that, so I won't be surprised at all if he's an undrafted free agent. All right, as promised, Baker Mayfield. Now, if there wasn't all the reports leading up to the draft, including day of the draft, that the Browns were heavily leaning towards Baker Mayfield, this would have blown my mind. It still blows my mind to an extent, but I would have been so surprised. I would have just collapsed on the floor, and maybe I'll look like an idiot and be totally wrong. Won't be the first time or the last time that would be the case, but I tell you what, man, I think I thought John Dorsey made a mistake last year. Again, we don't know yet. I thought John Dorsey made a mistake last year with the Chiefs when he took Patrick Mahomes ahead of Deshaun Watson, and I like Pat Mahomes. I just like Deshaun Watson a hell of a lot more. And I think he made a mistake taking Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold, and time will tell, but your thoughts on Baker Mayfield going number 1 overall?
I think you and I are very similar in this, in that this was very surprising. When the reports started coming out yesterday, heavily that GMs around the league, that's what they were thinking. I thought maybe it was a little bit of smokescreen, but then again, why have smokescreen when you're the number 1 pick? You don't need to hide anything from anyone. It didn't sound like they were looking at trading partners. So, I was a little skeptical of that going into the draft. And then, obviously we're hearing more and more people out of Browns camp are starting to say that, that's what was going to happen with the number 1 pick. And, I don't get it either. We watched Baker Mayfield, obviously, the last 2 years against Ohio State. Obviously, he was a Heisman Trophy winner, but guys of his height, there's not many that have succeeded in the NFL. Drew Brees and Russell Wilson are obviously the two comparisons that come to mind. Drew Brees is one of the most accurate passers in NFL history, and I know Baker Mayfield was very accurate in college. I'm not sure that I see that translating as well as Drew Brees did in the pros. And he's not nearly as fast as Russell Wilson. You look at their 40 times, quite a bit off. He is quick. He is shifty. The only thing I can really think is that, they brought in Tyrod Taylor. They've got Carlos Hyde there. They're looking to kind of run, not necessarily a college offense, but a little bit more of that, which some NFL teams have done successfully, obviously. And, maybe that's their thought is we can get Baker Mayfield, obviously a proven winner, a leader of men, so to speak, and, get him in here. We'll start off with Tyrod, get that offense going in that kind of, running quarterback direction, and then we'll transition to Baker Mayfield. But, I was surprised, even when it happened that was actually what's going to happen, even though I'd heard about it all day. And, we'll see. Maybe you and I will be wrong and the people that get paid the big bucks to make these decisions. But the track record for the Browns in drafting quarterbacks hasn't been great. I thought there were obviously safer picks out there. And, they went in the riskier direction. But, like I said, maybe we'll eat our words down the road.
That's what makes it so fun, is the drama. We don't know, but we all have our opinions. Some people we're torn on. Some people we have very strong opinions on. And it's just, I love the draft. And I can't wait for tonight. I think rounds 2 and 3 it's almost as fun as the opening night. So it's like my favorite event of the year that's not like an actual live sporting event as far as anything in the sports world. So great stuff, as always, from my guy, Patrick Murphy. Thank you very much, Patrick. And thank you very much to the listeners out there for tuning in to the show. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.